Well, I mean, I'll put this question to Joachim Bitterlich, who's the former German ambassador to NATO. He's also former German ambassador, he's former European diplomatic and security advisor to German Chancellor Helmut Kohl. Thank you so much for joining us, Herr Bitterlich. I'm sure you've been watching what's been happening at NATO and that rather forlorn picture of Zelensky standing there. I know it was just a photo, probably clicked at a particular moment. He may well, though, have been hoping for formal membership to NATO, but that could have meant World War III, right?
Yes, and therefore I think the answer, especially by the Americans and the Germans, had been extremely clear from the outset of the summit. No membership now, because this could have meant the so-called Article 5 of a NATO treaty, but you have to be in solidarity with any member state threatened. And therefore, NATO membership will occur only once the war is over.
So let's just try and understand the implication of that. Are there any countries in NATO at all right now who you think would say, oh, let's get Ukraine in and let's actually go to war with Russia over Ukraine? Or is that something which, I mean, there's almost a consensus that nobody wants it?
I think there have been a certain number of member states, especially those on the Eastern Front, the Baltic states and Poland, who would have been ready to deepen this relationship now. Not only delivering arms, not only delivering equipment, not only helping them, but assisting them further. But the great majority of member states of NATO have been refusing, let's say, to raise this risk of, let's say, of a World War III.
So essentially what NATO is telling Ukraine and told Ukraine at the summit as well is that, look, we're going to help you, we're going to give you arms, we're going to support you, but we are not going to go to Russia on your behalf. So at some point you've got to start thinking about peace talks and a negotiated settlement. Would that be a fair summary?
Exactly. Because NATO wants to keep the door open to a negotiation, to a negotiated ceasefire and peace between Ukraine and Russia. And therefore, you can't let's say, exclude this through the entry of Ukraine into NATO.
Right.
And therefore...
And do you think there's any chance at all that Ukraine is ready now to start talks with Russia, or do you think, see this war? When we were last speaking, you said it's going to last for years. You know, who knows how long it'll last for? Is that still your assessment?
Well, I'm still not convinced for the moment that both sides, that the Ukrainians and the Russians, are ready to enter into, let's say, ceasefire and peace negotiations.
Right.
I think the Russians are waiting more for this offensive on the Ukrainian side, on the Eastern Front, yes. And the Russians want to see how they are able to resist, because I think the Russians have shown certain weakened sides in the last weeks, not only by Prigozhin's, let's say, so-called, I call it nearly an operate push, because he has been received afterwards even by Putin. Strange story on Russian soil. But I don't see the Russians ready now to enter into ceasefire negotiations, nor the Ukrainians. Right. What was helpful there were the Indian side, the African side, and some others trying to push for a ceasefire, pushing for negotiations on the end of this war. I think it's slowly timed.
Right. Well, let me just quickly, before I allow you to get your advanced reaction to my next story, which is, of course, Prime Minister Modi's visit to France and the sort of a reception that France seems to be giving him, all those new defense deals that are being done, a close strategic embrace between France and India. How is the rest of Europe seeing this?
Well, we are beginning all together, not only France, but Germany and others, to take India more seriously than in the past.
Okay, so
this is new.
So you're saying it's not just France, you're saying even Germany and other countries are now saying India needs to be taken a lot more seriously and relations need to be elevated.
But this presupposes at the same time, let's call it, a more active role of India in world politics. Not only just a neutral one, but a more proactive role in world politics. And this could mean, let's say, I remember debates, for example, with Indian colleagues of you, when I was asking for an Indian part in, let's say, in a peace guarantee on Ukraine, including United Nations Blue Helmet soldiers from India. I had two reactions from the Indian side. One, this is not our affair. This is not our aim. We don't want to be present in Europe. And my answer was, well, dear friends, if you want to be one of these, let's say, decisive parts of this new world coming up, please, and of a new role of Asia, you have to be more proactive. This includes for me that India should be able or ready to become, let's say, a guarantee power for peace in Ukraine.
Right. Well, I guess Ukraine has got other issues, the Russia connection and all, same as what NATO was displaying. But it's not that India hasn't sent peacekeepers in other parts of the world. And I think your basic point is correct that as India rises as a great power, it will have to take on, it will and probably want to also take on greater responsibilities across the planet. Thank you so much. All right. Thank you so much, Ed Bitterlich. Great to talk to you.
Always a pleasure to talk with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being with us.